and ask Ms. Whitworth to come up and for her budget presentation.
Good morning, everyone. Okay, but bear with me if I do the side trick here for Whiplash. I'm used to having the computer monitor here. Okay, I'm here to present the amended 25 and 26 budget recommendation for the department for your approval this morning to be passed out of committee to the full board for this afternoon's approval. And I'm going to start off with this first slide here. Maybe, maybe not. There we go. Nope. Okay. Here on the first slide here, you'll see well, let me back up for a minute. Let me just say this. Once the budget instructions did come out, there is no change. We were instructed to maintain our current levels and our state general fund components. So you'll see a very flat budget when it comes to state general funds in the amended and in the 26. You will see our estimates for our excise and any truing up of transportation fees and the transit trust fund fees. So in this amended FY25, you'll see an increase of $257 million, roughly in excise for the department to bring it to $2.4 billion. In transportation trust fund fees and transit trust fund fees, those are flat. Those are actually adjusted based on actual 23 collections. So we already know what those numbers were. Those are those numbers from 23. There's no change there. And then in state general funds, like I said before, which is made up of airport aid, ports and waterways, rail, and there's no change in that component as well. Moving right along. What is the deal here? It's hypersensitive today. Okay. What this is here is another view of how the funds that I show that are break up into the various categories from the highest to the smallest. As you can see in our capital projects fund here, which is made up of capital construction, capital maintenance, and local roads admin, it's roughly $1.4 billion, which makes up 52% of the amended budget. In routine maintenance, there's $534 million, which is made up of that comes in at roughly 19% of the overall budget, so that's the second highest component. The third is general operations, which is roughly 11% of the budget. That is the administration component, the data collections. You have traffic management, planning, and program delivery in that area. The next is LMIG. LMIG is made up of 10% of the excise, so that's truing up of the excise there. And GEO bond debt service is roughly 4%. Then comes into play intermodal, which is airport aid, transit, rail, and the waterways, which is 3%. And then in payments to CERTA and payments to the ATL is roughly a little bit less than 1%. I have included on here the freight program because that was a newly created program in the amended budget, as y'all recall, in amended 24, which we had $500 million added. And we have some funds are being carried over from 25 to 26 in those projects, but I just wanted to highlight the freight program there since it was a newly created program. All right. I'm at a disadvantage for going first here. I'm sorry with the computer. First up, you have the GEO bond debt service, and there's no change to the debt service. Next, you have the airport aid program, and as I said before, the governor wanted a flat budget, so there's no change in airport aid. Next, you have capital construction. You'll see the add of roughly $125 million, and what that does, it gives us the additional capacity to do some additional projects. In capital maintenance, there's an add of $100 million. What this does, it helps us offset our inflationary costs that we have, mostly on resurfacing. As y'all recall, the cost per mile of resurfacing has increased, which has prohibited us to do as many lane miles resurfacing as we had. This right here, this additional infusion into the budget will help with that. And then lastly on this page is data collection of the addition of $9 million, and that's really to support our required federal reporting that we do in that program. All right. On this next slide, you'll see there's departmental admin. We had no change in admin. In the freight program there, I'm just highlighting the freight program because in the amended 25, we roughly have slated $61 million worth of projects that will be delivered in 25 in that freight program that was created. In LMIG, you'll see the truing up of the 10% of excise, which is the additional $25.7 million coming into that program. There's no change in local roads, planning, ports and waterways. And then in program delivery, you'll see an increase of $697,000. And really what that does, it helps us because in the amended budget with that additional $1.5 billion infusion that we received into the budget, that really helps us deliver that much larger program through program delivery. All right, on this next slide, you'll see rail. There's no changes in rail. In routine maintenance, there's an infusion there, $5.4 million, and what that does is help with our increased contracting and material costs. You'll see an increase in traffic management at $527,000. What this does, it helps us with the costs associated with like safety projects, technology projects, and then there's no change in the amended in transit. And then lastly on this slide, there are payments to CERTA and payments to the ATL. There's no change in those programs as well. So those are the changes that is recommended for the amended budget. Any questions on the amended before I move on to the 26 recommendations? All right. All right, in our 26 recommendation, here's our current estimates. There's a $284 million increase in excise. In the hotel motel, the transportation trust fund fees, which is made up of the hotel motel, heavy vehicle, alternative fuel fee, there's an add of $10.2 million. In the transit trust fund, which comes from the ride share, the 50 cents that you pay on Uber and light limo taxis, there's an increase of $5.6 million in that program. I will highlight, these are right now are strictly estimates. We've just closed out, since there's a 2-year look back for 26 on collections, the financial statements for fiscal year 24 have not been finalized yet. So you'll see this being trued up at a later date, and the numbers will change. In state general funds, you'll see a reduction here of $4.8 million, and what this is a reduction in the locomotive diesel fuel tax. There's a reduction in that, so that's reflected there. All right, here is the bar chart that I've shown previously, which the biggest sum is always going to be for the department is the capital projects program, which is made up of 52%, like it's over 50% of our budget, which is the capital construction, capital maintenance, and local roads admin. Routine maintenance is making up roughly 20% of that. General operations is 11%, which is, like I said before, for all of our new board members, consists of the administration, data collections, planning, program delivery, and traffic management. LMIG is 10% of the excise that we have in the budget, so that gives you the $248.6 million. And then our GEO bond debt service is 4%, followed by our intermodal programs at 3%, which is airport aid, rail, transit, and ports, and then payments to the ATL and to CERTA, and then I included freight again in there. And those remaining funds that we're appropriating in the amended budget will be depleted at the end of 26. All right. On this next slide you see here, which shows the program by fund source, the GEO bond debt service, we're truing up the debt service, so there's a reduction in our debt service. You see that there of the $12.7 million. There's been no change. There was no change in airport aid. Capital construction, there's an increase of $119 million, which is for additional capacity for projects throughout the state. Capital maintenance, you heard me talk about previously, that $110 million there is again to offset all those cost escalation increases and inflation that I talked about in the amended budget in 25 on our resurfacing needs. Data collections, that 9,020, that was for the required, bringing it into the base for our required reporting requirements for the feds. On this next slide in departmental admin, there is an add of a little bit over $1 million. What this is for our increased IT costs and cybersecurity that we have for the department. That's come in. We're asking for those additional dollars in there. I highlighted the freight program here because we'll deliver roughly $273 million is slated to be delivered, which is the remainder of those funds that we received of the $500 million in the amended 24 budget. So those will be depleted at the end of 26. LMIG, there's an additional 28.4, which is truing up 10% of excise. There's no add in local roads administration, planning, or ports. In program delivery, you'll see the additional $2.6 million. And like I said previously, this is due to the much bigger program that we received in the amended and us being able to deliver all those projects. So that's helped with that program. Coming over into the next slide. I know. I hope the next presenter has better luck than me. Okay, perfect. In the rail program, there is no change there other than that there's a reduction, like I stated previously, in the locomotive diesel tax of $4.8 million. In routine maintenance, you'll see an add there of $32 million in routine maintenance. And that's for those increased contracting costs and material costs that, you hear the commissioner talk about a lot when he does his presentations. Traffic management, there's an add there of $7.9 million. And what this is we are looking at doing some consultant servicing for permitting purposes, like to support the district and the TMC for the review of commercial driveways and for traffic control device permits. We've taken a look at it, and in order for us to deliver better customer service in these areas, because we've had an increase of roughly 5% in permitting throughout the department, this will help with that. I'm sure all of y'all have had a phone call about some permits, driveway permits at some point in your life on this board. In transit, you'll see the additional $4.8 million, and what that is the transit match and to administer the urban and rural FTA funds. And then you'll see the additional $5.6 million, and that is a formula distribution that is done with a portion of that going to the ATL. On this next slide, you'll see in payments to CERTA and payments to the ATL, payments to CERTA has an increase of $150 with a slight Garvey debt service adjustment, and that's the only thing in that category. My apologies on all the technical difficulties. I guess it's a good thing we're requesting additional funding and IT support. So here today is the amended 26. Is there any questions on the 26 budget? All right. If there's no request, Chairman, I'll ask for your favorable approval out of committee to the full board for this afternoon's approval.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion from the committee?
So moved.
Motion second. Any comments or questions? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Is there anything else that needs to come up before the committee? If not, we will stand adjourned.
Thank you. This time the P3 committee will come to order, and I would like to introduce Tim Matthews. He's our Assistant P3 Division Director as our pre-let administrator, and he's going to give us an update on the I-285 West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Commissioner. I'm here to give an update on the I-285-20 West Interchange project. I'll first go over the overview of the project, and I'll go over to stakeholder and coordination that was involved in the project. We'll then go into workforce development, contracting structure that we procured the project under, and then the evaluation structure that we evaluated the project under, and then some next steps for the project. First, instead of me just talking about the scope of the project, we'll play a video of fly-through of the project so you can see what's going on, or at least proposed in the interchange. Actually, stop. Not clicking. Okay, all right. I inherited some IT issues. All right, so unfortunately it may not work, but starting with the I-20 corridor, the project starts at Factory Shoals Road overpass along I-20 located within Cobb County, which is the westernmost terminus of the project. We'll first travel eastbound toward the I-285-20 West interchange. I-20 provides access to key employment centers located around Metro Atlanta and is a major commuter route for residents of Fulton, Cobb, and Douglas counties. The I-20 corridor experiences heavy morning eastbound traffic towards Atlanta and heavy afternoon westbound traffic leaving Atlanta. Project improvements will reduce congestion, eliminate weaving movements, and enhance safety along I-20 and include an additional travel lanes along I-20 from Factory Shoals Road to Hamilton E. Holmes Drive for approximately 6 miles. It'll also reconfigure I-20 westbound to improve traffic flow with the addition of westbound collector distributor lanes, or CD lanes, between Fulton Industrial Boulevard to the I-285 I-20 West interchange. The project will repair or replace multiple bridge structures along the I-20 corridor, including, but not limited to, I-20 over Six Flags Road, I-20 over the Chattahoochee River, I-20 over MLK Jr. Drive, and I-20 over Fulton Industrial Boulevard, as well as Fairburn Road over I-20. And will reconstruct ramp configurations to facilitate traffic movements from I-20 westbound and the proposed CD lanes to Fulton Industrial Boulevard. Now, the American Transportation Research Institute ranks the I-285 I-20 West interchange as the 5th worst truck bottleneck in the country. All commercial vehicles traveling through Atlanta must use I-285. Both the I-20 and I-285 are designated freight corridors and have elevated levels of truck usage. The existing I-285 I-20 West interchange is a system-to-system interchange with 1 cloverleaf ramp, 4 flyover ramps, and a local access ramp to MLK Jr. Drive. The project will improve the geometric design, vertical grades, and operations of the I-285 I-20 interchange. Construction improvements to the interchange include a new right-hand exit from I-20 westbound to I-285 southbound and MLK Jr. Drive, replacing the existing left-hand exit ramp that's out there today. A flyover ramp from I-285 northbound to I-20 westbound and a flyover ramp from I-285 southbound to I-20 eastbound would be constructed to replace the current left-hand exit ramps within the interchange to right-hand exit ramps, which is traditionally what you see on our interstates. A flyover ramp from I-20 eastbound and I-285 northbound would be constructed to replace the existing loop ramp that exists today. Improvements to the geometric design and vertical grades on all of the ramps will improve the design speeds within the interchange. As we transition and travel along I-285, starting at the southern terminus on 285, just south of MLK Jr. Drive, the interchange and extends north to Donald Lee Hollowell Parkway interchange, approximately 2.4 miles. Project improvements along I-285 include repair or replace bridge structures and ramps along I-285 within the interchange and I-285 over Delmar Lane and I-285 and Harwell Road over Sandy Creek, as well as add auxiliary lanes on 285 along from Donald Lee Hollowell Parkway south to MLK Jr. Drive for approximately 2 miles to accommodate the interchange improvement project improvements. As a design build finance, or DBF, VIA is playing now, or DBF project, GDOT expects proposers to prepare innovative designs and construction solutions to further enhance the critical interchange and the I-220-285 corridors within the project limits. So we'll let it play here now that I described the project. This is I-20 Factory Shoals Road, as mentioned. And you'll see on the screen as new lanes are introduced on I-20, there'll be the lighter color lanes on the north side of 20. These are the bridges being replaced over the Chattahoochee River, and then Fulton Industrial Boulevard. And here you can see the new CD system or collector distributor lanes on the north side of 20. And this is a similar type of system we built on Transform 285 at 400 and 285. That's just completed construction. Here, bridge replacements, MLK Junior Drive, Fairburn Road, and then moving into the interchange proper, where you see new flyover ramps and removing and replacing the exit ramps to right-hand entrance ramps and replacing the loop ramp that exists today as well. We should transition to 285 here in just a second. Transition into 285 here, Linkwood Road. Starting at Boulder Park Drive, MLK Junior Drive, going north. Approaching the interchange, removing that loop ramp that exists today with flyover ramps. Again, going north through the interchange, building auxiliary lanes. Harwell Road, all the way to Donald Lee Hollowell Parkway. Apologize for the technical difficulties there.
Question while the video's playing, is that about all the traffic we can expect to see?
No, it's dispersed out throughout all the lanes, so that looks really good. Talk about stakeholder coordination next. GDOT's approach to public involvement outreach is not a one-size-fits-all solution. GDOT's goal was to implement more inclusive outreach strategies to effectively reach a broad representation of stakeholders, businesses, and the public, specifically targeting impacted individuals and groups within the EJ communities. To best achieve this, the project team leveraged a variety of communication outreach efforts to foster more robust engagement, garner meaningful input and feedback with the prospect of increased support for the project. We focused on stakeholder groups and their constituents identified within and near the project corridor for the multi-phase public involvement approach. And those included legislative and elected officials looking at the City of Atlanta, Fulton, Cobb, and Douglas counties, business organizations, Chamber of Commerce, and major employment centers, community improvement districts, the historic Collier Heights community, neighborhood planning units, senior centers, and homeowners association. Lenders are leaders of churches and religious organizations, school, K through 12, as well as higher education, civic and community development centers, and commuter and transit agencies all were involved in this coordination. Moving on to workforce development, we have also worked together with proposers to develop guidelines for a workforce development program for this project. This program uses existing Atlanta-based workforce programs to develop, train, and retain local community members living within the tiers you see on the screen in applicable roles within the developer team, as well as to bring attention to the resources those entities provide through public outreach and events. And the Tier 1 is the immediate area adjacent to the project itself, and then Tier 2 is surrounding area further out of the project. Some P3 of procurement accomplishments. This project started as we hosted an industry forum back in December of 2022. We received SOQs in March of 2023. GDOT and state joint resolution was approved by the State Transportation Board in April 2023 and announced to shortlisted firms in May of 2023, all through the RFP process, getting to receival of proposals in June of this year for this project. This project was procured using a design build finance or DBF contracting structure. GDOT conducted the procurement of the developer for the project using a P3 DBF best value methodology and has or will enter into multiple agreements with CERTA to advance the project. Those include a joint resolution agreement for GDOT to provide CERTA funding for the project over an 8-year period as established by the RFP, and a state for years, which is an agreement to grant CERTA the necessary property rights on the project, allowing CERTA to fulfill its project obligations. An intergovernmental agreement, or IGA, which defines the roles and responsibilities of CERTA and GDOT during all phases of the project. This document also establishes GDOT to function as the project manager or agent for CERTA on the project. And finally, an annual renewable funding memorandum of understanding, or MOU. This document provides the mechanism for project funds to flow from GDOT to CERTA, from which CERTA will provide payments due to the developer during the project term. Note that this project does not include developer operational phase. Collectively, these agreements enable CERTA to comply with its obligations, which are ultimately set forth in a binding agreement with the selected developer. We refer to this agreement as the project agreement. The project agreement establishes the invoicing and payment terms under which CERTA will make payments to the developer along with the performance obligations of the developer. CERTA will make payments to the developer during the construction phase of the project, which is from roughly 2025 to 2030, and repay financing costs through 2 years beyond substantial completion of the project. This is the same type of contract we used on the I-285 East interchange project, which is currently under construction. And with this structure, GDOT still remains the project owner and manages the oversight and day-to-day activities of the project, utilizing GDOT processes and procedures, as well as GDOT's project management consultant and owner verification firms. This structure has been used in the past and has been very successful for delivering these types of projects. Just a quick overview of the roles again for each entity, with GDOT and CERTA. GDOT serves as the project sponsor and the oversight of the project. CERTA serves as a contracting entity as well as invoicing and payment. And then the developer will do final design, construction, and financing the project, all governed by contract terms set forth in the PA. So the P3 procurement method includes a 2-step best value procurement process. Georgia DOT and CERTA shortlisted bidding teams that are the most qualified to do the work based on experience and their technical and financial capabilities. Next, proposers develop fixed price proposals that include technical and financial submissions based on their project approach and innovations, such as alternative technical concepts, or ATCs, which are equal or better to the base design that we proposed. Just some stats on the procurement itself. We had over 110 plus participants in the industry forum for this project. We had 6 rounds of one-on-ones with the shortlisted teams. We accepted 52 alternative technical concepts for the project presented by the teams, and that's both teams. And then we received 2 proposals for the project and evaluated those. So what does the evaluation look like? We have a very thorough proposal evaluation process, starting with the responsiveness and pass-fail review by the admin and supervisory subcommittees. We ensure that the proposals contain all the required content and certifications. If clarifications are needed, those are coordinated with proposers through a request for clarification or RFC process. After completion of the administrative pass-fail review of the proposals, as well as upon the conclusion of the public comment period for the project, GDOT opens and begins a detailed review of the technical proposals. Each technical proposal is evaluated independently, with evaluators identifying strengths and weaknesses of each proposer against the evaluation criteria that are important to GDOT and to the success of the project. The technical subcommittee will then convene and develop a score recommendation for each proposer for consideration by the Selection Review Committee, or SRC. Also at this step, the financial subcommittee conducts a review of the strength of the proposer's finances, which is a phase 1 pass-fail, not of the project, but of the entities themselves bidding on the project. This is a comparison back to the shortlisting to ensure that the financial strength of each proposer has not changed or diminished since they were shortlisted. The financial subcommittee then meets and votes to recommend whether each proposal is a pass or a fail, and then moves forward. The SRC will then meet with the chair of each subcommittee. For the financial subcommittee, they review the pass-fail recommendation from the subcommittee and vote to accept that recommendation or to revise it. For the technical subcommittees, they hear the strengths and weaknesses of each proposer against the evaluation criteria and recommend scores, and then vote to either adopt or modify those scores. After determining the proposers have received sufficient technical scores and have passed the phase 1 financial, the SRC then authorizes the financial subcommittee to begin their review of the financial proposal, ensure that all financial modeling and financing assumptions are reasonable and accurate, which is called the phase 2 pass-fail. Upon completion of this review, the financial subcommittee votes to recommend each team's financial proposal passes the required criteria or not. This recommendation is made to the SRC, who then votes whether to adopt that recommendation. The SRC then opens the price proposals, or the bids for the project, calculates the financial score based on those proposals, and then calculates the total proposal score by adding the technical and financial scores together, identifying the highest scoring proposer. The supervisory subcommittee then conducts a bid validation of the highest scoring proposer to validate that the technical and financial proposals are consistent, and presents their findings to the SRC. If the highest scoring proposal is determined to be valid, then they are recommended by the SRC to the apparent best value proposer to the P3 steering committee. The P3 steering committee then votes to recommend them for award by the State Transportation Board. And then the State Transportation Board then considers whether to vote yes or no on those best value proposers. Real quickly, what we asked for as far as the RFP and technical submittal, just some things on here: project management approach, their construction approach and sequencing, DBE performance plan, workforce development, and quality program and safety, to name a few. And then for financial, here we looked at their financial capacity, their financial plan, investment grade ratings, as well as interest rate approval, various financial models, their letters of credit or debt commitment, and then cost and price data proposals. Okay. All right, the two shortlisted teams that we evaluated for this project are on the screen. The first team is Legacy Infrastructure Contractors, LLC. The lead construction contractor is C.W. Matthews Contracting, and the lead engineering firm is Infrastructure Consulting and Engineering, along with a collection of their nominated subconsultants and subcontractors and independent quality firms. The second team was West Perimeter Contractors, or WPC, with the lead construction contractor of Atlanta Metro Construction, consisting of Ferrovial Construction U.S. Corp., and their lead engineering firm is AECOM Technical Service, again, along with their nominated subconsultants and subcontractors. Both teams submitted qualified, responsive proposals in June of 2024 and have demonstrated that they are capable and competent with significant experience in the type of work required to advance the I-285-20 West Interchange project. All right, what to expect next? As I've said, we've developed evaluation criteria that meets the goals of the project. The evaluation has been thoroughly reviewed for its responsiveness and making sure it meets the requirements of the RFP. And then during the evaluation process, various subcommittees presented their results and scoring recommendations to the SRC. And the evaluation was Once the evaluation was concluded, the SRC presented its results and recommendations to the P3 Steering Committee. And as of this morning, 9 o'clock, the P3 Steering Committee met and did approve the recommended scores and best value proposer for the project, which I will bring later this afternoon to the full board, the results of that best value proposer. With that, any questions? Thank you. All right.
Is there any questions from Tim? If not, at this time, I would like to invite up Ms. Meg Perkle, our Chief Engineer, to give us an update on the State Route 400 express lanes.
Good morning, everyone. It is really great to be here today to talk to you about the Georgia 400 express lanes. And today marks the end of a long, complex procurement journey, but it just marks the beginning of a journey to get this project built. So I'm glad to be here. All right, it worked. Okay, so this afternoon at your board meeting, I will reveal the results of the best value selection for the Georgia 400 Express Lanes project, and I'll ask for action from the board. So before I do that this afternoon, I just wanted to talk about this important project and the thorough process that GDOT and CERTA have undertaken to get to this point. So as you know, State Route 400 is a major north-south corridor in the metro Atlanta area, and it's serving the fastest growing communities north of the city. The State Route 400 corridor has a concentration of residential, commercial, institutional, and industrial land uses, and the project spans 2 counties, Fulton and Forsyth. Some of the economic centers in the corridor include the Perimeter Center Business District, which is one of the largest Class A office markets in the Southeast, with over 5,000 companies located there. The technology corridor along State Route 400 is the fastest growing tech area in Georgia and boasts the highest concentration of tech talent in the state, with over 120,000 IT jobs in North Fulton alone. New economic and retail centers continue to emerge along State Route 400, including Avalon, Halcyon, North Point Mall, and the latest venture of The Gathering in Forsyth County. And the project crosses several cities, including Sandy Springs, Roswell, Alpharetta, Milton, and unincorporated parts of southern Forsyth County. Historically, the project area has housed nearly 70% of the region's population, according to the ARC, Atlanta Regional Commission model, and the project area is projected to contain approximately 2/3 of the entire ARC model region's population by 2050. Forsyth County is one of the fastest growing counties in the country and is forecasted to have the highest population growth over the next 20 years in the state. Currently, the traffic along Georgia 400 is around 278,000 vehicles per day, and by 2046, that will grow to 348,000 vehicles per day. Tim walked you through this slide in detail, so I won't do that, but I just wanted to reiterate that this is the same format that we use to contract for the State Route 400 P3 project, and just remind you that CERTA is the contract holder, and through the agreements that GDOT and CERTA have, they established that we will manage the project for CERTA. The Georgia 400 express lanes offer additional travel choice and better mobility, and it extends the option of reliable travel times to all travelers. The express lanes are optional. I can't say that enough. They are variably priced toll lanes that provide a choice for drivers to bypass congestion and have a predictable and reliable trip. They will improve mobility in the corridor for express lane drivers and transit users along the corridor, and possibly for the general purpose lanes as well. The Georgia 400 express lanes will add express lanes in each direction from North Springs MARTA Station to north of McFarland Parkway. The project includes reconstruction of several overpass bridges and interchanges along the corridor, including Spalding Drive, Holcomb Bridge Road, and Webb Bridge Road, and includes improved pedestrian accommodations on these bridges. It will provide direct express lane connections to MARTA's existing North Springs station and accommodate future bus rapid transit stations at Holcomb Bridge Road and North Point Mall, and provide a direct bus-only connection to the Windward Parkway Park and Ride facility. And I'll expand more on the partnership with MARTA in a couple of slides. The general purpose lanes in the corridor will remain free for public use and are expected to benefit from some congestion relief with the new capacity option in the corridor. In 2007, the State Transportation Board adopted a resolution stating that all new capacity within limited access corridors in Metro Atlanta shall be managed lanes. Since that time, Georgia has developed a strong track record with the managed lanes in Metro Atlanta, and they are well used and very popular. There are 1.3 million CERTA Peach Pass holders and over 2.4 million Peach Pass trips per month in Georgia. I think it's safe to say that Metro Atlanta has embraced express lanes. Georgia express lanes are considered multimodal corridors that enhance existing transit operations and promote new transit opportunities. Public transit providers like MARTA and Greta Express will be able to use the express lanes free of charge, so transit and registered riders will only need to pay their standard ride fee with their transit provider. We know the benefits of express lanes because we've already seen the results in our own network. The on-time performance of transit vehicles in the Northwest Corridor express lanes increased from 83% to 96% with the opening of the express lanes, and transit riders are saving an average of 15 minutes per trip. Travel in the Northwest Corridor express lanes is up to 27% faster than that in the general purpose lanes on I-75. And travel in the State Route 400 express lanes is expected to be up to 30% faster than the general purpose lanes during peak travel times. Peach Pass customers will see no difference in operations. CERTA will continue to provide customer service for seamless system-to-system experience. And if you have a Peach Pass, you'll have access to all express lanes in Georgia. The key is you have to hit it twice. So talking about the bus rapid transit corridor on Georgia 400, I want to expand a little bit on the really excellent partnership that this project has allowed GDOT to forge with MARTA for this corridor. In 2017, Atlanta Regional Commission, in collaboration with MARTA, Fulton County, and the 14 participating cities, helped fund and managed a countywide transit expansion study. A range of transit technologies and modal options were considered as part of the Fulton County Master Transit Plan. And bus rapid transit was selected as the preferred alternative by MARTA in the Georgia 400 corridor for higher capacity transit along Georgia 400. Bus rapid transit, BRT, is a high-quality bus-based transit system that delivers fast and efficient service and is intended to operate with the reliability of the rail service. So in the early stages of developing the Georgia 400 project, this became MARTA's preferred alternative, and it became the start of an amazing partnership with MARTA to incorporate their preferred BRT alternative into the Express Lanes project. This will function similar to rail, starting at the North Springs MARTA station. MARTA will have direct access to the Express Lanes with stations at Holcomb Bridge Road, North Point Mall, and at the Windward Park Park and Ride, which is the site of a future MARTA transit-oriented development. The State Route 400 Express Lanes project will provide the foundation for future MARTA BRT operations. The project includes property acquisition and construction of a significant portion of the future BRT stations at Holcomb Bridge Road and North Point Mall, including entrance ramps, elevators, platforms, stairs, and bus lanes. The project's P3 procurement allocated technical points for supporting MARTA's efforts to fund BRT in this corridor, and both proposers elected to do this in their proposals, providing funding for MARTA State Route 400 BRT of up to $26 million, and that was a scored competitive part of the procurement. The state of Georgia also allocated $100 million in general obligation bonds for BRT infrastructure, and this is the single largest transit investment in the state, by the state. MARTA has also applied for a mega grant to secure funding required to complete 100% of the build-out of the BRT in the corridor. So the State Route 400 Express Lanes project will provide substantial improvements to facilitate BRT operations. Okay. In 2028, Georgia was awarded a $184 million infra grant by U.S. DOT to advance express lanes on Georgia 400. To make the most of this award, GDOT used some of the funds to advance improvements in this corridor. The State Route 400 bridge replacements design-build project was pulled forward as part of a phased delivery of the State Route 400 express lanes. The Pitts Road, Roberts Drive, and Kimball Bridge Road bridges over State Route 400, which were over 50 years old and nearing their end of life, have been replaced and widened to accommodate the future 400 express lanes. The new bridges feature taller, wider structures with multi-use paths and sidewalks. And this project was funded using the infra grant and also included funds from the local governments to enhance the aesthetics of the bridges. So hopefully this video will play. Crossing fingers. There we go.
Hey Georgia, today we're here at Pitts Road Bridge over SR 400 in Sandy Springs. This Sandy Springs Bridge was the final structure to be completed as part of SR 400 Bridge Replacements Project. The overpasses at Roberts Drive and Kimball Bridge Road in Alpharetta were also replaced. The new bridges have multi-use paths and sidewalks and were built wider and taller to accommodate the future express lanes along SR 400. The planned SR 400 express lanes will be part of the larger Georgia Express Lanes network, designed to provide a connected transportation network with reliable trip times for motorists and transit users.
So again, the City of Sandy Springs contributed for the Pitts Road Bridge and the Roberts Drive Bridge, and the City of Alpharetta contributed for the Kimball Bridge Road aesthetics. The design-build team of C.W. Matthews and ICE was awarded the contract for those bridges, and notice to proceed was in early 2023. We've also done some early work with Colonial Pipeline to remove a schedule risk item from the future project, and that was to relocate a very large Colonial Pipeline that goes under Georgia 400. The commissioner likes to tease Tim Matthews because he has held so many meetings with neighborhoods, city councils, and business groups along the Georgia 400 corridor over the last 4 years, or many years, that Russell says he can run for mayor up there. He calls him Mayor Tim. But I can say that we've had a lot of interaction, and there's only more to come as this project gets underway and gets to construction. Stakeholder coordination has occurred during project development and will continue throughout construction. We've also had a commitment from Roswell to help contribute to the Holcomb Bridge Road replacement for aesthetics that they would like on that bridge. Effective stakeholder coordination is important and will continue to be with all of the regional partners in the Georgia 400 corridor. We conducted a lot of public outreach as well. We had a public information open house in 2019 and a series of public hearing open houses in 2020. And as we continue and have lane closures and construction, this communication with the public will continue and expand. So a more robust overview of our environmental process and public involvement coordination efforts is in our environmental document, which is available on the web. So a P3 project is a public-private partnership. The private developer will be our partner in this project, and the state has considered the most effective and efficient allocation of roles and responsibilities to that private partner to achieve the best value for the traveling public. In a P3 model, the state selects a developer to design, build, finance, operate, and maintain the project for a term of 50 years following construction. So again, this is a long-term partnership. GDOT has worked closely with the U.S. DOT Build America Bureau, who provides financing assistance for large infrastructure projects. Two of the most common sources of financing that they assist with are TIFIA, Transportation Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act funds, and the Private Activity Bonds, or PABs. TIFIA provides credit assistance of 33% for eligible project costs, providing an avenue for private partners to fund, and typically offers lower interest rates and longer-term repayment periods than private market. We worked closely with the Build America Bureau to obtain an allocation of $2 billion in PABs. PABs are a tax-exempt bond program that lower the cost of capital for delivering large and expensive projects. These are low-interest debt availability that we work to secure for the developer. And if the developer chooses to take use of these opportunities, the debt is held by the private partner, not the state. In addition to PABs and TIFIA, private partners are expected to fund any gap in project costs through private equity and potentially taxable debt as needed. During the design and construction phase, the P3 approach maximizes opportunities for bidding teams to propose innovative, customer-focused, value-creating solutions. We call them alternative technical concepts, and Tim touched on this in his presentation. But ATCs allow proposers to submit modifications that either reduce costs or improve revenue potential for the project. These ATCs are confidentially reviewed by GDOT and CERTA, and we provide feedback to the proposers and choose which ones we choose to accept. So we have complete discretion over rejecting or accepting ATCs. Numerous innovations through this process have been brought forth by both proposers. For toll operations, so based on our contractual parameters and oversight from CERTA, the Express Lanes private sector partner will set and adjust the toll rates to manage speeds and congestion in the express lanes to ensure a reliable trip. That's the whole point of the toll, is to ensure a reliable trip time. If the revenues are lower than forecasted by the private sector partner, the state would not be impacted and would not be required to make any additional payments to support the project. If revenues exceed the private sector partner's forecast, the state is entitled to share in the excess revenue. The tolls charged by the private sector partner for the Georgia 400 Express Lanes must adhere to the contractual parameters using an operational toll rate established by CERTA. And under the toll services agreement, CERTA will maintain all Peach Pass accounts and the customer-facing focus that is managing the toll card holders. So the toll rate is set by the developer, but the toll customers will still have the same interface with CERTA and will be seamless. So that way, CERTA will procure and distribute Peach Passes and maintain those relationships with our partners and our interoperable partners in other states. As far as facility maintenance and operations, GDOT will contractually transfer the responsibilities and risks of operations and maintenance and life cycle rehabilitation of the express lanes and general purpose lanes in the corridor to the private partner for the 50-year operating contract term. And this is very similar to what we do. A lot of our maintenance is contracted out. We've had over 20 years, we've had a contract maintenance agreement on the I-95 corridor, so very similar to what we've done in other parts of the state. The private sector partner will be required to fund such works and would be required to meet specific standards, as we've stated, to meet our requirements. And at the end of the term, there will also be specific conditions that have to be met for handback after 50 years. So here we are today. We have we issued a notice of intent to advertise back in February of 22. We've gone through this process for the last couple of years. In June, 2 years ago, this board approved a joint resolution with CERTA to proceed with this project and to establish our working agreements with CERTA. And as you can see, we have reached a lot of milestones in this procurement journey. And we are now to the August 2024. We originally announced the selection of 3 shortlisted teams, and they were invited to submit proposal for the project, and this was back in September of 22. In May of 23, one of those teams dropped out, and then we moved forward with 2 other teams, the Georgia Express Link Partners which is comprised of Centra Infrastructure and TKO and Star Infra, with Ferrovial Construction and Arcadis as the engineer, and then the State Route 400 Peach Partners, which are Acciona, Meridium, ACS, with a contractor Acciona and Dragados, and lead engineering firm Parsons. So these two remaining teams were extremely capable and competent, and I just want to take a minute now to express my extreme appreciation for both of these teams for going through this with us and going through this procurement. Doing something like this is not a small undertaking. It is a long-term commitment, and it is a lot of money, and these teams were interested enough to work in Georgia and to work with us and interested in this great project. And I can't thank them enough for all of their engagement, the great technical concepts they brought forth, so many meetings, so much effort to perfect our contracting mechanisms, and just really appreciate that these teams went to the effort they went to, and we had two great partners. And we can't do this without good competition, and we had two really great competing teams in this effort. So I really appreciate their commitment. Oops. Like I mentioned, P3 procurements are complex, and it can be difficult to make it through the entire process, but the numbers on this slide capture a small snapshot of the effort that was involved for 400, similar to the slide that Tim showed you. Our team and the CERTA team has worked tirelessly for the last 2 years to get to this point. And I can't say enough about our P3 division team, our legal team, and our innovative financing team, and the team at CERTA. It's been a lot of effort. I also want to remind you that this is a federal project, and FHWA has also been our partner, and they've been very involved with us every step of the way. They've had to turn around expedited reviews and get things done in record time, and they're a big part of the success of this project as well. But I also want to acknowledge our advisors, who are really excellent at what they do, and they have provided exceptional guidance. Program Manager H&TB, General Engineering Contractor AECOM, Financial Advisor EY, and Legal Advisor Ashurst. Tim walked you in detail through how the committees work, and so I won't do that again with this project, but it's the very same structure. And just as a reminder that, you know, we have a very rigid and process-focused procurement process, and this is a very thorough vetting of the RFP. The folks who are going through these review processes are blind to how the scores are going to come out at the end. They are reviewing what's in front of them submitted in the proposal. It's a lot of work, and the sanctity of our procurement is paramount. And so it's a good effort, and I think we have an excellent process. And I won't walk through all the details, but just let you know that we've gone through this process since the proposals were submitted in June, just like Tim described earlier for the West Interchange. So, as I said, we'll be entering into a long-term partnership with the private developer to build, operate, and maintain the State Route 400 express lanes. To evaluate the proposals from the two teams, we used a best value selection process based on combined blind scoring for technical and financial aspects of the proposal. The technical score is worth 25%. As part of the evaluation criteria, GDOT and CERTA were focused on maximizing project value and how the developers were enhancing capacity, developing the local workforce for this and future projects, and reducing Georgia DOT's risks for long-term maintenance with the existing infrastructure. These themes were important to GDOT in the evaluation of technical proposals and providing the most value. Numerous innovations through the ATC process have been submitted, thereby allowing them to competitively leverage their private sector innovation in the overall design, construction, and operations approach. The financial score is worth 75%. A public funding contribution was available up to $900 million, but in this delivery model, it is optimized that if the the toll revenues are not sufficient to cover all the project costs, they can utilize some of the public funding availability. However, the public funds were also used for PE and procurement costs, some right-of-way costs, transit components, and early work payments to get the bridges done and the Colonial Pipeline relocation. Financial proposals are evaluated to ensure that all of the financial modeling and financing assumptions are reasonable and accurate. Proposals have received 2 indicative investment grade credit ratings, which means that rating agencies have reviewed the proposals and associated debt financing and have assigned a rating to them sufficient for public-private funding. So that's key. During this process, both proposers had to submit 2 rating agencies' indicative ratings with their proposals. So thank you so much for your attention today and to talk about the Georgia 400 projects. I'll come back before the board after lunch and with a recommendation from the P3 Steering Committee to seek your favor approval to award this project. Thank you again. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Is there any questions for Meg at this time? Yes, Dana?
So, Meg, how is our process different from other states' processes? I mean, is there any significant difference between what we do in other states when it comes to this type of large, long-term project? And have we learned anything from what they've done to ensure that we don't make those same mistakes with our projects?
That's a great question, Dana. The answer is, some states can't do this. About half the states have the ability to do this kind of contracting. And we do have great lessons learned from other states, and that's why we have the advisors we have, because they have worked in other states. We have relationships with other states. We go and visit and do peer reviews with other states. So we have definitely incorporated lessons learned from previous projects into our process. But the overall contracting process and review process is very similar for these type of projects.
Anybody, any other questions? If not, we stand adjourned.
Thank you.
At this time, the Committee of the Whole will come to order. And we're today going to hear from our Time Task Force presentation in regards to our implementation in regards to those programs that exist today. So we greet Christina Berry, who is our Assistant State Traffic Engineer.
Good morning, and thank you. Today I'll be presenting on the Traffic Incident Management Enhancement Task Force, also known as the TIME Task Force, and how it helps us to improve traffic incident management in Georgia. All right, so who likes to be stuck in traffic? Yeah, I didn't think so, me either. However, incidents do occur on our roadways, and when they do, it's our goal to get them mitigated as quickly and as safely as possible. The photos that you see on the screen are from an incident that occurred earlier this year. It involved an overturned truck on I-20 eastbound just after 5 in the morning. The Georgia State Patrol contacted the TMC and requested a trip activation that sent TCR, a pre-qualified heavy wrecker, to the scene. A livestock emergency response plan was also implemented because the cargo of this truck was 41 cows. This is training that GDOT provides through the TIME Task Force, and the tower had received this training. TCR responded in 35 minutes, and they moved the overturned truck to the shoulder. The lanes were clear in 89 minutes, which met the trip requirements. An emergency traffic interruption was put in place, and once the trailer was relocated, cattle containment began. The traffic interruption was in place for 3 hours and 22 minutes, and 35 cows were transported safely from the scene. This incident is a really good example of how the initiatives from the TIME Task Force, such as TRIP and LERP, help promote quick clearance and coordinated incident management. This is the agenda for my presentation today. I'm going to spend some time talking a little bit about the history and the makeup of the TIME Task Force. I'm going to touch on some of the key initiatives of the TIME Task Force, and we'll highlight some training initiatives. Then we're going to take a quick look at how Georgia compares to other states, talk about our upcoming events, and then I'll be glad to take any questions that you may have. The TIME Task Force was formed in August of 2002 to address mobility and safety in Metro Atlanta. The mission was expanded statewide in 2017. The TIME Task Force is comprised of responders and others from various agencies, including transportation, fire, rescue, police, towing, EMS, and others. The TIME Task Force is governed by a set of bylaws, and it has a board of directors. The TIME Task Force is committed to continue the dialogue of interagency coordination and cooperation. It aims to create an opportunity for multi-agency training that promotes teamwork, and it also serves as a platform for participants to develop common operational strategies and to get a better understanding of other agencies' roles and responsibilities in traffic incident management. This slide shows the mission and the vision of the TIME Task Force. So the mission is to develop and sustain a statewide incident management program, and the vision is to facilitate the safest and fastest roadway clearance. We want to strive to ensure that roadways are cleared efficiently and safely to minimize disruptions. The aim of the TIME Task Force is to lessen the impact on emergency responders and the motoring public. The likelihood of a secondary crash increases by 2.8% for each minute the primary incident continues to be a hazard. Often, these secondary crashes can be even more severe and more impactful than the primary crash. By promoting quick clearance, we want to reduce the risks and inconvenience faced by emergency responders and the general public during incidents. This slide shows the board of the TIME Task Force. The board is comprised of two chairmen, so Jason Josie from GDOT Hero and also Captain Richie Howard from the Georgia State Patrol. Then there's the permanent agency positions, which are shown in the light blue, the board of directors, which are shown in green, and the committee chairpersons, which are shown in dark blue. The voting permanent agency positions are held by GDOT, GMA, and the Governor's Office of Highway Safety. And you can see that these are just various different parts of GDOT. We recently added a position for GDOT Strategic Communications, and that's really helped us to have a better coordination with strategic communications. We also have non-voting positions, and these are for FHWA and our statewide traffic incident management support staff. The board of directors, shown in green, represent different disciplines within traffic incident management. You'll notice that we have quite the diversity of participation. We have participation from public agencies, such as the Georgia Department of Public Health, private industry, like Shaw Industries and Lickety Split Towing, as well as local law enforcement and fire. The committee chairs head up the committees that conduct initiatives to further the goals of the TIME Task Force. There are 5 committees. So the Grants Committee issues an annual call to gather TIME Task Force grant applications and to evaluate and determine awards recipients. The Training Committee approves, develops, and offers the training for the TIME Task Force, and they track certification for TIME and TRIP members. The Programs Committee plans and facilitates our membership activities and our annual events. We have the Operations Committee, which focuses on after-action reports and TIM teams. And then the Communications Committee, which focuses on communication between transportation and public safety agencies, as well as with the public and media. Additionally, I would mention that we have a website, we have a quarterly newsletter on there, we have Twitter or X and Facebook as well. And so those are some of the ways that we get our message out. The TIME Task Force has quarterly membership meetings, and we want to make sure that we're giving the opportunity for truly statewide participation, so these meetings move around the state. For example, our last quarterly meeting took place in Augusta, and our next quarterly meeting is next Thursday in Jackson County. The board also has monthly meetings to conduct Time Task Force business, and then there's also an annual strategic planning retreat to set goals and priorities to review the annual budget. A lot of the funding for the Time Task Force does come from GDOT. So GDOT provides administrative support through our statewide traffic incident management services contract, and we also purchase insurance for the Time Task Force. There are a few other small sources of funding for our annual events that just come through sponsorships, exhibit fees, and registrations. And I'm going to talk about some key initiatives of the Time Task Force. All right, this slide shows the key initiatives of the Time Task Force. So first we have grants, which I already touched on a little bit, but they provide grants to agencies for acquiring necessary equipment to enhance incident management capabilities. Next we have the Towing and Recovery Incentive Program, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit, but it incentivizes efficient towing and recovery of heavy vehicle crashes. Next we have the Open Roads Policy, which prioritizes the rapid reopening of roadways. We have the TIM guidelines, and these were just recently updated, and you can access those on our website. And then we also have TIM teams, which are regional teams for coordinated incident management. All right, on this slide, you can see the Open Roads Policy. And so if an agency is interested in joining the Time Task Force, this is how you join. You sign on to the Open Roads Policy. So the Georgia statewide Open Roads Policy has been signed by the GDOT Commissioner, Department of Public Safety Colonel, and is endorsed by the Governor of Georgia. The Open Roads Policy states that whenever a roadway or travel lane is closed or partially blocked by a traffic incident, the Georgia State Patrol, Department of Transportation, law enforcement, and other public safety agencies will reopen the roadway as soon as possible and in an urgent manner. Safety of the public and responders is the highest priority and will be preserved. And again, you can find the Open Roads Policy on the Time Task Force website, and there's instructions for submitting it. There we go. All right, so Time Task Force membership is on the rise. We had 30 new agencies sign the policy last year, and now we have a total of 183 agencies that have signed on. You can see the breakdown on the slide by type of agency. And I would just note, to be part of the TRIP program, a tower must sign on to the Open Roads Policy, and currently we have 20 towers in the TRIP program. But we have 35 tow companies that have signed the policy. So there's a lot of interest in signing on to this policy, even outside of just our own programs, which is a very good thing. Oops. Now I'm going to touch on the TRIP program. TRIP stands for Towing and Recovery Incentive Program. This program provides financial incentives to pre-qualified heavy towers for timely response and clearance of large commercial vehicle crashes. Heavy towers must meet certain requirements, and they have to apply to the program. If they're assigned a zone, then they're responsible for responding to incidents within their zone within a certain amount of time, and we currently have 23 TRIP zones. For an incident to be considered a TRIP, the incident must meet certain criteria, and TRIP must be activated by trained on-scene responders such as HERO, CHAMP, GSP, law enforcement, fire, and GDOT maintenance. And recently, we've made some changes. So under certain circumstances, TRIP may also be activated by the TMC remotely, because some of these crashes, it's pretty obvious, you know, if there's a tractor trailer on fire or something like that, you're going to need to call TRIP. And they can see that from the camera. And so the quicker we get the tower rolling, the better off we are, because they're not getting stuck in as much traffic. The tower is responsible for clearing the incident from the roadway in a timely manner, and that is within 90 minutes of NTP to qualify for the bonus. We've had TRIP in Atlanta since 2008, and it's expanded from a small number of zones to the 20 that we have today. We also expanded TRIP to Macon last year, where we created 3 TRIP zones. This map shows the TRIP zones that we have in the Atlanta area. We have 20 zones that cover approximately 470 miles. And this slide shows the trip zones that we have in Macon. These cover approximately 40 miles. So this chart shows the average roadway clearance time from 2007 until today. So if you remember, we instituted TRIP in 2008. The bottom bar on the graph actually looks like the border of the chart, but it's actually the average duration to clear these types of incidents in 2007, which was 216 minutes. And so after we instituted TRIP, there was a huge drop in these average roadway clearance times. And we've continued to see this as we have had the program over the years. And it's trended somewhat downward over time. We did see a tad bit of a spike on the last couple of years, but it's back down to 37 minutes for this year so far, and so that's really, really good. Another initiative of the TIME Task Force is TIM Teams. So for the purpose of TIM Teams, the state is split into 15 regions, which are grouped into 4 statewide TIM areas. Each TIM area has an area analyst, and these are provided for by our statewide traffic incident management contract. And the analysts conduct the TIM teams in those regions, and their contact information can be found on the website. In addition to the GDOT-sponsored TIM teams, there's also 35 additional TIM teams that are headed by local champions. Now I'm going to touch on some of our training initiatives. The TIME Task Force has a learning management system, which is a centralized hub organizing and managing learning. It provides a centralized platform to manage all training and educational resources, and it can be accessed via the TIME Task Force website. And if anybody would like to use your profile, you can go online. You can contact tim_training@dot.ga.gov, and we can get anybody that wants to set up with that. Now, one of the most popular classes that we teach is called Livestock Emergency Response Plan Training, and you saw that we used that in the crash that I began the presentation with. So this training is something that members of the TIME Task Force had heard about, and they targeted for deployment in Georgia in 2020. Now, originally, this training was known as the Bovine Emergency Response Plan Training, but there's actually, there's more types of livestock than just cows, and so we wanted to change it to livestock, and we also wanted to save ourselves from having a fairly unfortunate acronym, so we changed the name to LERP. This training covers local emergency planning and coordination, local resource identification such as livestock haulers, horseback wranglers, and veterinarians, transportation and biosecurity hazards, euthanasia and mortality, animal care and handling, and it also provides up-close and hands-on operation of complex trailers and pens. So how does Georgia compare? Monthly, FHWA sends out updates on the National TIM Responder Training Program. GDOT is consistently one of the top states, or Georgia is consistently one of the top states in terms of responders trained. We have provided training to over 52,000 responder professionals to date, so we really have a lot to be proud of. The TIME Task Force is dedicated to reducing non-recurring congestion and enhancing safety of our first responders. By teaching the Strategic Highway Research Program, or SHARP-2 training, across our 15 regions, our efforts have significantly improved the efficiency and effectiveness of TIM teams. Through TIM teams, we provide this training that equips first responders with necessary skills to handle traffic incidents safely and efficiently. And another brag for Georgia is that we actually have more TIM teams than any other state, so that's awesome too. We do have some upcoming events. So we have 2 biennial events. One is our executive briefing breakfast, and we held that last year. And so this year it's time for our biennial conference. That's scheduled from October 13th through 16th, and registration is available, and information is available on the TIME Task Force website. The contact email that you see there can be used for information about the conference or really anything Time Task Force related. If there's any questions that come up or you need anything from us, just use that email address and somebody will get back with you. And thank you for allowing me to present today. I'd be glad to take any questions that you have at this time.
Do we have any questions or comment from our board? Yes, Ms. Lemon.
I'm curious on your, the slide that had like the board members on it.
Uh-huh.
There was no representation within the primary counties, primary 6 counties in Metro Atlanta. I'm curious why we don't have somebody within those primary counties represented on the board. Because their experiences are different in the heart of our community, including the city of Atlanta, than in the suburbs.
So the way that the Time Task Force board works, so the public, permanent positions are just nominated by the agency, so GDOT can nominate those. For the committees and for the directors, people actually run for those. And so it could be that we just didn't have people running from the metro counties, but I think it's a really good comment. And definitely something that we would want to consider, you know, maybe recruiting some people or encouraging others to run for these board positions because they do turn over, I think, about every 2 years.
Including the city of Atlanta.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Mr. Wood?
I'm not sure I know how to frame this question, so I'm just going to try to explain an example, because I think this would fall under your purview of possibly trying to find a solution. But this morning, driving in on I-75, traffic was unbearable, and it was basically stopped. And I get to the point to where I see what might be causing people to slow down and react to this, and it's one of our hero units with its lights flashing. Now, I'm sure it was there for a purpose, but whatever reason had already moved on, but the truck was still there with its lights on. And my conclusion was that it was those lights that was causing the drivers to react and slow down and almost stop. And so I guess my question is when one of our vehicles like that, or a law enforcement fire truck, when an incident is over and cleared, do they have a certain time frame to where they need to turn off their emergency lights or their flashing lights so that they don't continue to create driver slow down behavior, or whatever the terminology for that is? Yeah. Does that make sense at all?
It does make sense. I am not aware of any policy like that, but it's definitely a good comment. And if I find that we do, I'll definitely get back with you.
Okay. Thanks. Thanks for indulging.
Any other comments? I'd like to say, Christina, thank you for the update. I think it's very timely for each of us to get this update and understand exactly what's going on with our traffic incident management as we go forward in our state. And as indicated by various board members, I think that you see the response, that we have a great concern also for safety, for the time period that it takes for instances to be cleared from our roadways so traffic can forward as it should be. And I just want to say this is very timely to each and every one of us as we look around our state and the growth that we have, and that we're looking at the freight that's on our roads, that as well as each of us as individuals as we drive. And I want to commend us for being able to bring this forward again to remind us exactly what the time and the task force formed from time, that we're able to deliver such a fine thing and involve so many partners across the state. And I hope we will continue to push out into the other regions of our state and have even more. And thank you again for what you have said today and brought this to our attention once again. And we look forward for an update as we go forward for some of the answers to our questions. Any other comments? Seeing none, the Committee of the Whole stands adjourned.
Well,